Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested and welcome back to Projections, our show about VR. And we're always on the lookout here for new virtual reality experiences, games and experiences that kind of push the boundaries as to the kind of stories that VR can tell or the places that it can take us. And one of those experiences was released last year called The Under Presents. You may have tried it out on the Oculus Quest. It was made by a company called Tender Claws. And what was notable about this half game, half immersive theater experience was that there really were two components to it. There was primarily a game called Time Boat, in which it was this scripted puzzle, immersive theater puzzle, where you watch this whole story unfold from kind of a God's eye perspective, and then enter this world, which was set on this ship, and try to solve the mystery as to what happened between these NPCs, these scripted characters. And wonderful voice acting, a really intricate story, and it's one of those worlds that you could really spend a lot of time in, even though you were just passively watching these NPCs. Now, the other half of the Under Presents was their lobby, actually. When you start the game up, you enter what's essentially a cabaret, this nightclub, where it's actually a multiplayer setting. Other players pop in and replace NPCs, so you don't know if they're real or not, and you're not talking to each other. There's no voice communication, so you're really just using gestures. You can snap your fingers, you can pull off your face mask that you're wearing, and kind of just inhabit the space. And in that space of that cabaret setting, there are performers, and occasionally those performers on a regular basis would be live performers. And Tender Claws had partnered with a theatrical performing group where about 11 of their actors would cycle into this lobby and do their sets and then kind of interact with the audience. And it was one of those really trippy experiences where you didn't know if you were going to jump in at the right time and catch a live performance. But when you did, it became this really interesting and intimate social connection and community, which has kind of grown since that launch. People have been returning. They've extended these live performances, so people are returning and watching their favorite actors perform in the game. Now, just launched this week is an extension of that, and it's called Tempest. So it's based off of Shakespeare's play, The Tempest. And it's a ticketed experience inside the Under Presents. So the app is free now for you to enjoy about half an hour of the game. And then you can also buy for $15 a 40-minute play, essentially, a one-person, one-actor play that you jump in at a scheduled time with up to 7 other people to watch one of these actors perform not just a straightforward interpretation of The Tempest, but one that really takes advantage of the powers of virtual reality.
Woo! That was Ariel, the most powerful spirit in Prospero's arsenal. So here we are. Prospero has succeeded in bringing his enemies to this island and trapping them just as he was trapped. You see, Prospero was betrayed by his brother, Antonio.
So that's what I tried this past week, and what I did was jump into the game, and now there's this, what looks like a theater that you jump into. You load up at the showtime. You go into a theater lobby where the other participants kind of hang out, and then when showtime starts, you then are teleported, and for the next 40 minutes, you are taken on this journey. And it feels a little bit partly like community theater, where you would go and watch on a small stage a performance, but also a little bit like kind of like a museum tour or like a city walking tour, where if you were traveling to a new place and you wanted a curated, guided tour in a small group of a specific location, this really reminded me of that. It was, when I tried it, about 6 people in that group, including the performer, and they guided us through the worlds of the story. It's not just set in one location. We are teleported to the different locations. The Tender Claw's interpretation of the events in the Tempest. And then you, as the viewer, are also an active participant. While you don't use your voice to engage, you are brought into the play. And that's what I think really differentiated The Tempest from immersive theater, whether it's live immersive theater like Sleep No More or The Speakeasy in San Francisco, and some of the kind of immersive theater games that we've played before. While the live performer adds so much because it is live and there is this tension of the live event happening, things are happening in real time, you're not just a passive participant. You have the ability to wander. You're encouraged to wander these environments that you're whisked off to, and also kind of form these unspoken, because you're not using voice communication, but unspoken bonds with the other attendees, where at the end of the experience, after 45 minutes, when I left, it really felt like a unique social gathering that I wanted to go back to. I really left there feeling very different than just having, watched a 45-minute film or played 45 minutes in a game. It really felt like going to a place in a way that's different than other VR experiences have done in the past, even other social ones, whether it's playing a multiplayer game or even something like a big screen shared cinema experience. This being a theater that you actively participate in and are given roles in was something different. And to learn more about the creative direction and the technical challenges of producing this type of VR experience, I chatted with Tender Claw's co-founder Samantha Gorman recently. So let's take a listen. So now I'm thrilled to be joined by Samantha Gorman, the founder of Tender Claws. Samantha, how are you doing on this launch day for?
I'm doing great. It's busy, but very excited to be here.
And thank you so much for the time. I wanted to use this opportunity to pick your brain a little bit about the design of this really unique experience, both Tempest and also what you and the team have created with the Under Presents so far. Let's start with, I guess, the experience so far and what the reaction has been, what kind of lessons that you and the other developers have learned from the feedback and from what people have been enjoying, because it's such a different type of VR experience.
Yeah, it's been super interesting. We started the Under Presents probably a little bit over 2 years ago, and we've done a bunch of different VR projects now, including BVR, but we're coming from also a background of theater, and have close ties with a kind of experimental ensemble theater group in New York called Piehole. And there was a lot of talk about the intersections of VR and liveness and immersive theater. And we're like, these people have been doing productions that, break the fourth wall for, and the traditional stage for a long time. It'd be super great to get them into VR and see what we can come up together. So that's kind of what generated the Under. We have a bunch of shows in the Under itself, and some are pre-recorded acts from actual downtown New York theater performers, like Erin Markey, who sings about her cat's love of wet food. The other opportunities are also have live actors involved. So in directing the live actors, the Under and the Tempest are very different experiences. The Under is more of a long-form single-player narrative campaign that I think people have linked to Sleep No More in a way, where you're on a ship and you can follow different character storylines. However, there's a multiplayer hub world around that where some of these performances take place. And it's a durational performance. So we had started with live performers kind of inhabiting and taking over NPCs in the Under in November. So they've been going every single day from morning till night. Wow. And yeah, it's been crazy. So some of the things that have evolved from that is different ideas of how you perform for people who are maybe more used to playing games, or when there's a lot of different attention that one can have in an environment. And we've discovered that a lot of it is about how these performers, when people enter the game, now they know, but before they may have not known there were live people. So there's definitely the testing limits of what is an NPC and what is a live person, which is really fascinating. And it's a lot about like how you create and angle your body and address them make them seen for responsiveness.
And you've designed the interactions so that the player, while they don't speak, the players can interact and snap their fingers and pull their masks off. And I'm sure there are many decisions that were made in terms of how much expressiveness you want the players to have to then have a back and forth for a performer. Can you talk a little bit about those choices?
Yeah, for sure. So like many indies, one of the most pivotal game moments for me was playing Journey when it first came out. And of course, you can clearly see like our inspiration from anonymous multiplayer and Journey. And there's a really, I think, intimate and exciting moment when you're like, wait, like I thought I was playing with an AI, but this is a live person with me. And the kind of gestures and types of communication that type of anonymous multiplayer allows. In the Under in particular, for actors and guiding the scene, it was important to give them like the ability to have voice to create the world and direction. But the players still have a lot of expressivity, even though the models are kind of simple. There's a lot you can gain from body language. And the actors often talk about now they're able to distinguish different players just from the way they carry themselves in the game, which is like pretty fascinating and insane. Like if they tilt their heads, how they're listening, how they're creating different actions. There's also a good deal of like inviting players to take on roles and perform. And the kind of making it anonymous is something that makes people feel safer to do that at times.
I definitely felt that in Tempest, which I want to jump at, because Tempest, the stage encompasses you. There is no barrier between performer and participant. And in the session that I tried, there were 5 attendees watching, and within the span of this 30 to 40 minute theater experience, we built our own rapport with just gestures. And it was interesting that long period, you build a relationship just in that period of time. Is that something you're going for?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because the Tempest is a very different production than the Under. So building relationships has been fascinating in the long form format because, as I said, like there's players who return, there's a whole active Discord, and the actors, they, whether or not they say, that they know them, they know these people now. And some of them have, the actors, it's become very emotional for them, and they feel like these are their real friends as well. So it's kind of accelerated intimacy, right? But in the Under, storylines have evolved and characters evolved over many months through this back and forth with the community, where the Tempest, it's a more of a traditional theater show. It's a short form production where there's a lot of kind of ad-lib and improv, but there's certain, beats that, kind of remain as building blocks. And in that, each actor has their own skills and ways they've developed since November to kind of build intimacy and connection between audience members. Like some of them may ask everyone to, hold hands together, complete certain rituals together to move on to the next section. Others may there's like a group hugging dance off, I think other actors have. So each of them have their own ways of making it feel like you're really part of this ensemble as you're going through the piece.
How is that experience, the story designed then? You start off with Shakespeare and Tempest and the outline, the beats of the play, and you want to create environments and take advantage of all the benefits that VR can bring in terms of scale and reality bending imagery. But when you have up to a dozen different performers, you want to give them the freedom for their take. How do you script that out, and how do you develop that?
Yeah, so I think it started with I was reading the play and thinking about how to take moments from the play based on what I had seen be successful in the under and what it seemed like players enjoyed participating in. Such as like the guided tour and some of like performance, being the characters and various performances, and then create a through line through that. So then there's a sort of, structure, and I created essentially a script. However, that script was like, okay, here's suggestions of what can happen. Some of the few of the Shakespeare language and moments are those, I didn't really mess with, even though there's parts where it's remixed and kind of told anew. But a lot of the other parts of the script are really meant for them to look at, get at ideas of performance and ad-lib. And then over the course of a month of rehearsals, we would get together, do each scenes in groups, share ideas for those scenes. And then me and the other directors would work one-on-one with each actor, planning out like how they wanted to take it and blow it up from, their individual perspective.
So Miranda, you're going to be wandering around just being very lovely and sweet. Ferdinand, you're lost and verklempt and sad, and then suddenly you shall espy this beauteous maiden. And spirits, I need you to kind of make some lovey-dovey juice in between the two of them, sort of scent the air with love and beauty. Very nice. All right, be around, Miranda.
You definitely there's a sense of the tension of a live performance, of watching a performer play different roles, go on these wonderful monologues. What is their point of view? Do they have a special interface? Do they see things to help them? Because not only do they have to perform, they kind of also have to corral and, worry about things like technical support during the middle of this experience.
Yeah, no, exactly. These people are crazy. So they're all professional immersive theater actors, been in a bunch of different productions. And when we got them, not many of them were used to games or even had been in VR. So there was a whole transition. This is, back in October, of getting used to being in a virtual world, to begin with. But there's kind of this whole like training where there's layers of skills and like things they're learning. So not only are they doing improv and managing, crowd control and making sure they're active and responsive, but there's also kind of puppetry interface that they're dealing with, which is, kind of like complicated. And, they have the powers, they can do many things in the world. They can cue sets and lights and costumes and sounds, and so they're like wrangling all of this at once. It's pretty amazing.
And so these are the tool sets that your team have built, the kind of foundation, same as what the players themselves can do in terms of what's connected between the Under and Tempest and pulling the mask and the kind of magic.
Yeah, it's definitely similar. There's a sort of like, rig where because you don't want it to look like people are pointing at menus all the time. So we had to kind of design a UI to make it look more natural. There's also a literally digital dressing room where they can change avatars.
And all of this presumably is the foundation for you guys wanting to do more of these. How long does it take to script and then create the sets, if you use the traditional production and theater analog to create, hopefully recurring new performances?
Yeah, so for the full under, but that includes everything from all the recorded acts and the, time boat, that was like roughly a little over 2 years. But because we had a lot of this back end, what happened is we, during, the current, when COVID hit, a lot of our actors, the theaters were closing in LA. So we kept this production together pretty fast. And I think because we had, a lot of the technology to build on, we were able to do that. We kind of, proposed it, and then we, hit them up. It was probably like definitely less than a few months, which is, crazy for a development cycle, but we've been working really hard to make sure that they could continue. This is what helps us support the live cast in the under as well. And, we were like, okay, this is going to be really fast and it's going to be a crazy undertaking. Are you guys in? And like, a lot of them were really excited to jump on board and work it out.
Is the kind of the ratio of one performer to 8 attendees and these kind of scheduled performances, is that what you as and storytellers are interested in the VR space, or is that a technical limitation, or would you want to consider expanding to, something more akin to a Sleep No More, a full-blown, longer form immersive theater with, maybe fewer appointments but bigger audience?
It totally depends. For us, we're very interested in, we know that there's some great platforms who are doing larger concerts, like, Wave, VR. For us, the Under was generated from cabaret and vaudeville style performances, as well as like more intimate immersive theater encounters. And even if there's an actor with 8 like up to 8, it's probably more 4 or 5 at one time. There's multiple instances of that happening simultaneously. So we built a backend system that allows us to scale for audience, and that kind of helps us to do this. And there's a whole like crazy scheduling Jenga behind the scenes.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're running this through September. So between now and then, is the experience, do you have plans for it to evolve as, based on the feedback? This is the launch day essentially, but how can the experience change over that time?
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the plans for what happens next. I think, we definitely want to make sure that we're running it because it doesn't seem like the theaters are going to open up here anytime soon for the actors. So we want to make sure there's that buffer. There's probably going to be definite continuous check-ins and directing. I've seen the show, I've lost track of how many times I've seen it, but with each audience, there's a different dynamic. So I think as we are able to see more and more audience, they'll definitely, because it's live, we can adjust and, change for what's happening.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's one of those that after it's over, I wish it was longer. I want to go back to those worlds, and definitely there's it's interesting bond you feel with the performer and the other participants. It's really, really cool. Thank you so much, Samantha, for your time, and congratulations on the launch. Can't wait to see what you guys do next.
Awesome. Take care. Thanks for having me.
So The Under presents Tempest is playing now. It's an in-app purchase for this ticketed event for $15, and they're doing shows daily in the evenings, on the weekdays, and the afternoons on the weekends, depending on where you live, of course. And it's something I really recommend. If you enjoyed The Under Presents, the game that launched last year, this is a no-brainer. It's something that I think you're going to love as a new experimental performance art form in virtual reality, as well as a new type of social experience that's different than just a standard multiplayer game or a straightforward theatrical experience in VR. It's also something that, it really depends on the group you're in. When I did it, it was with 5 people, and so it felt like a full tour group, to use that kind of curated tour analogy. So I don't know what that experience will be like if it's just 1 or 2 people, or if it's filled out to the full 8 people in the group. And even though you can't speak, you are encouraged to participate. So a lot of the experience will depend on kind of the participants' willingness to go along for the ride. And I don't think this is the type of experience for people who are cynical. I mean, if you're skeptical of VR, if you don't enjoy it, then you shouldn't be paying for it anyway. But, go into it open-minded, and really, I think VR allows you, to participate in a way that you might not even in real life. If you went to theater and asked to go on stage, I think I would be more shy to do that than how willing I was to actively participate in this experience while wearing a headset. And I only got to try it with the one performer, so there are 11 different performers, each with their own supposedly different takes and different storytelling flourishes and improv. And so there's apparently a little bit of just variability there, as well as opportunity to kind of evolve this show as it runs for the next 2 months. And it's something that I really hope they have a chance to do more of. I'd love to see them take on something that's not classic Shakespeare, and while there's some novelty to that and the worlds they can show, I would love for them to take on something that's maybe more comedic or something a little more modern, and maybe even with more than one performer at a time. I'd love to be able to watch 2 trained performers riff on each other for something that's maybe a bigger shared experience. Lots of different opportunities for them to tinker with and explore. And it really feels like they're pushing the boundaries of what VR can do for things like theater. So that's the Under Presents Tempest. The core game is now free to try out, and the Time Boat experience is still an in-app purchase, while the Tempest experience is a ticketed event that you get for that one time. I'd love to know, if you get a chance to do it, what your thoughts are and what other types of social VR that you've been enjoying. And we'll be back next time with more games coverage and more hardware coverage. Thanks for watching. I'll see you then. Bye.